I found a Polaroid in my new house. It was of me sleeping last night. I moved into a creepy old house in a small town and found a Polaroid of myself sleeping in my bed from last night. But I live alone and have no cameras. More photos keep appearing, showing moments I don't remember, and I'm starting to think something inhuman is stalking me. I'm terrified, and I need help figuring out what's happening. Part 1. The first photo. I don't know how to write this without sounding unhinged, but I'm desperate for advice, so here goes. My name's Alex Harper, I'm 29, and 2 weeks ago, I moved into a small, rundown house in Millhaven, a nowhere town in upstate New York. I'm a freelance graphic designer, which means I spend my days battling Adobe crashes and picky clients who think, make it pop, is constructive feedback. The move was my attempt at a reset after a brutal year. My girlfriend of 3 years, Emily, dumped me for someone less stuck. My job at a marketing firm imploded when the company downsized, and I was drowning in debt from city rent. Millhaven was my escape hatch, cheap, quiet, and far enough from my old life to feel like a clean slate. The house is a 2-bedroom relic from the 1940s, with worked floorboards, peeling wallpaper, and a faint mildew smell that clings to everything. It's got a sagging porch, a tiny backyard overgrown with weeds, and windows that rattle in the wind. I didn't care about the flaws. It was $800 a month, unheard of for a whole house, and the Wi-Fi was decent enough for my work. I figured I'd fix it up over time, maybe paint the walls, plant some flowers, make it my own. I don't have family nearby. My mom's in Ohio, remarried to a guy I barely know, and my dad's been gone since I was 6. My friends are mostly online or back in Brooklyn, so it's just me, my laptop, and a duffel bag of clothes in a house that feels too big for one person. Millhaven itself is the kind of town you'd miss if you blinked driving through. Population 2,000, one diner, one gas station, and a main street with more empty storefronts than open ones. The locals are mostly older, retirees, or farmers, and they keep to themselves. My neighbors include Mrs. Carver, a widow who spends her days on her porch swing, knitting and watching the street like a hawk, and Tom Delaney, a retired mechanic who's always under the hood of his ancient Ford pickup. They waved when I moved in, but I haven't had real conversations with them. I'm not here to make friends, just to work, heal, and figure out who I am without the chaos of my old life. The first few days were uneventful. I unpacked boxes of books, kitchen gadgets, and art supplies, blasting lo-fi playlists to drown out the house's creaks. I set up my office in the spare bedroom, a cramped space with a slanted ceiling and a single window overlooking the backyard. I was exhausted but optimistic, sketching ideas for a new client logo and imagining a future where I wasn't constantly on edge. That all changed on the 4th day, when I found something that's turned my world upside down. I was in the living room, sorting through a box of old sketchbooks, when I noticed something wedged behind the radiator. It was a Polaroid photo, the kind with the thick white border, slightly yellowed at the edges like it had been there for years. I assumed it was a leftover from the previous owners, maybe a picture of their kid or a family dog. But when I pulled it out and turned it over, my stomach lurched. The photo showed me, asleep in my bed, in the blue flannel pajamas I'd worn the night before. My head was tilted to the side, mouth slightly open, the blanket tangled around my legs. The angle was from directly above, like someone had leaned over me, close enough to cast a shadow. I live alone. I don't own a Polaroid camera or any camera except my iPhone, which had been charging on the nightstand all night. I'd locked the front and back doors before bed, checked the windows because I'm paranoid after years of city break-ins. The house is small, living room, kitchen, bathroom, 2 bedrooms, and every step makes the floorboards groan like they're in pain. There's no way someone could have gotten in without waking me. I stood there, the photo trembling in my hands, my pulse so loud I could hear it. My face in the picture looked peaceful, vulnerable, and the thought of someone standing over me, their breath on my skin, made me want to vomit. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prank? But I hadn't told anyone my address except Jake, my best friend in Albany, and my mom, who's too busy with her new life to care about mine. Jake's not the pranking type. He's a software engineer who'd rather debug code than scare me. I called the real estate agent, Karen, a 60-something woman with a perm and a habit of calling me hon. She said the previous owners, the Thompsons, were an elderly couple who'd moved to Florida a year ago after Mr. Thompson's heart attack. No kids, no grandkids, no weird history. The house had been empty since, except for a few showings. When I told her about the photo, her voice got tight, like she was humoring me. Maybe a neighbor's kid snuck in, she said. I didn't buy it. Millhaven's not a place where kids break into houses for kicks. I spent the afternoon checking for signs of break-in. The windows were locked, the doors untouched, no footprints in the muddy yard. I even climbed into the attic, a dusty crawl space filled with cobwebs and insulation, but found nothing. No cameras, no secret doors, just a dead mouse and some old Christmas lights. By dusk, I was a wreck, jumping at every creak, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. I locked my bedroom door that night, shoved a chair under the handle, and slept with a kitchen knife under my pillow. Sleep was a generous term. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. Around 2 a.m., I heard a faint click from the hallway, sharp and mechanical, like a camera shutter. I froze, my heart pounding, waiting for footsteps or breathing. Nothing. I told myself it was the pipes, the wind, anything but what I feared. Part 2. The second photo. I didn't sleep after the click. At dawn, I dragged myself out of bed, knife in hand, and checked the house. Everything looked normal. Doors locked, windows secure, no new photos. I was starting to think I'd imagined the sound, that the stress was messing with my head. Then I went to the kitchen to make coffee, and there it was, another Polaroid, sitting on the counter next to my mug, like someone had placed it there while I was in the bathroom. This one was worse. It showed me in bed, curled up on my side, the knife clutched to my chest like a child's toy. The timestamp on the bottom said 3:47 a.m. The problem? I'd been awake at 3:47, staring at the ceiling, too scared to move. But the photo showed me sleeping, my face slack, oblivious to whoever had been standing at the foot of my bed. I dropped the photo and backed away, my breath ragged. The room felt too small, the walls too close, like the house was breathing with me. I grabbed my phone and called Jake, my voice shaking so bad I could barely speak. I sent him pictures of the Polaroids, and he went quiet for a long time before saying, "Alex, you need to get out of there. Like right now." He told me to order a security camera and call the police, which I did. I bought a cheap Wi-Fi camera online, but it wouldn't arrive for 2 days. The police were less helpful. 2 officers showed up, Officer Daniels, a grizzled man with a smoker's cough, and Officer Ruiz, a younger woman who seemed more sympathetic but skeptical. They took the Polaroids, walked through the house, and found nothing. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry, not even a smudge on the windows. Daniels suggested it might be a weird prank and told me to keep my doors locked. Ruiz was kinder but hinted I might have taken the photos myself, maybe in a sleep-deprived haze. I wanted to scream. I'm not crazy, and I don't sleepwalk. They left me with a card and a promise to follow up, but their expression said they thought I was wasting their time. I felt helpless, like the house was a trap I'd walked into willingly. That night, I couldn't face staying there. I drove to Millie's Diner, the only place open past 6 p.m., and sat in a corner booth, nursing coffee until the waitress, a tired woman named Cheryl, gently told me they were closing. I spent the rest of the night in my car in the parking lot, scrolling Reddit for advice. I posted in r/RBI, explaining the Polaroids and asking if anyone had dealt with something like this. The responses were mixed. Some said to move out. Others suggested getting a dog or checking for hidden cameras. One user, u/shadow corners, told me to look for false walls or crawl spaces in old houses, which made my skin crawl. The idea of someone living in my walls, watching me, was too much. I drove back at dawn, armed with a flashlight and a hammer, determined to tear the place apart. I started in the attic, tapping walls for hollow spots, pulling back insulation, checking every corner. Nothing but dust and spiderwebs. I moved to the basement, a damp, concrete room with a rusty boiler and stacks of mildewed boxes the Thompsons must have left behind. I was about to give up when I noticed a loose floorboard in the living room, under the rug. My heart was in my throat, as I pried it up with the hammer. Underneath was a small metal box, rusted shut. I forced it open, and my blood ran cold. Inside were 3 more Polaroids, but these weren't of me. They showed a woman, maybe in her 40s, sleeping in a bed I didn't recognize. The timestamps were from 2018, years before I moved in. Her face was pale, her eyes closed, and in one photo, a shadow loomed in the corner, too blurry to make out. There was also a folded note, written in shaky handwriting. They never see me, but I see them. I sat on the floor, the box in my lap, trying not to throw up. Whoever was doing this had been at it for years, maybe decades. I called Jake again, and he said he was driving up the next day. No arguments. I didn't want to stay in the house, but my bank account was stretched thin from the move, and I had nowhere else to go. I spent the day at the Millhaven Public Library, a squat brick building with flickering lights and a musty smell. The librarian, Margaret, a kind woman in her 70s with wire-rimmed glasses, helped me dig through old records. The Thompsons had owned the house since the 1980s, but before that it belonged to a man named Harold Grayson, a recluse who died in 1973. Margaret's voice dropped when she mentioned him, saying he'd been odd and that kids used to dare each other to sneak into his yard. She said he was a photographer, obsessed with capturing the essence of sleep. I didn't know what that meant, but it made my stomach churn. Part 3. The Town Secrets. That night, I stayed up with every light on, the hammer by my side. I kept hearing that click sound, sometimes from the hallway, sometimes from above the ceiling. Around midnight, I found another Polaroid slipped under my bedroom door. It was me, taken that morning, standing in the basement, staring at the metal box. The angle was from above, like someone had been perched in the rafters. In the background, there was a faint outline, a tall, thin shape just out of the light. I hadn't seen anyone down there. I grabbed my keys and ran to my car, driving to a motel an hour away in Watertown. I didn't care about my stuff. I just needed to be somewhere else. At the motel, a dingy place with stained carpets and a buzzing neon sign, I kept checking my phone, expecting a new photo to appear, like whoever was doing this could follow me. I barely slept, jumping at every noise, a car door slamming, the hum of the vending machine outside. The next morning, Jake arrived, all 6'3" of him looking ready to fight a ghost. He brought a crowbar, a baseball bat, and a can of pepper spray, his face set like he was going to war. We drove back to the house together, the silence between us heavy. The house looked the same, quiet, unassuming, but the air felt thick, like someone had just walked out the door. We started in the attic, tearing through insulation, checking for hidden compartments. Nothing. Then we went to the basement, and that's when we found it. A false panel behind the boiler, barely noticeable unless you were looking. Jake pried it open, revealing a narrow crawl space, just big enough for a person to fit through. My heart was pounding as we shone our flashlights inside. The walls were lined with scratches, like someone had clawed at them, and the air smelled sour, like decay. At the end of the crawl space was a shoebox, covered in dust. My hand shook as I opened it. There were dozens of Polaroids, some so old they were crumbling, others newer, all of different people sleeping. Men, women, even a few kids, their faces peaceful, unaware. The timestamps went back to the 1960s. Some had names scrawled on the back: Eleanor, Michael, Sarah. None of them were me, but they all had that same eerie vibe, taken in the dark from above. At the bottom was another note, in the same shaky handwriting: "They sleep, and I see. Always watching, never seen." Jake cursed and said we should burn the box, but I stopped him. This was evidence, proof I wasn't imagining things. We called the police again, and this time they took it seriously. Officer Ruiz came with a detective, Ellen Hargrove, a stern woman in her 50s with sharp eyes. They bagged the shoebox and the Polaroids, asked me to stay out of the house while they searched it, and said it might be compromised. I told them about Harold Grayson, and Hargrove's face tightened, like she recognized the name. She wouldn't say more, just told me to find somewhere else to stay. I went back to the library that afternoon, determined to learn more about Grayson. Margaret was hesitant, but showed me a box of old newspapers in the basement. I spent hours flipping through yellowed pages, my hands smudged with ink. In a 1973 issue of the Millhaven Gazette, I found an article about Grayson's death. He'd been found in the house, in the attic, surrounded by hundreds of Polaroids. The official cause was heart failure, but the article hinted at something darker. Neighbors reported hearing screams, and the coroner noted unusual marks on his body, like scratches. The photos were confiscated by police, but no one knew what happened to them. Another article, from 1974, mentioned a string of missing persons in Millhaven, all linked to the house. A woman named Eleanor, a man named Michael, a teenager named Sarah. Their names matched the Polaroids. I felt sick. The house had a history, and no one had told me. I confronted Karen, the real estate agent, over the phone. She stammered, saying she didn't know about Grayson or the missing people, that the Thompsons never mentioned anything. I didn't believe her. That evening, I met Mrs. Carver, my neighbor, on her porch. She was knitting, her hands moving mechanically, but her eyes were sharp. I asked if she knew about Grayson. She paused, then said, "Some houses hold on to things, Alex. Things that don't let go." She wouldn't say more, just told me to be careful. Part 4. The Thing That Watches. I'm back at the motel now, typing this on my laptop, my hands still shaking. The security camera I ordered arrived 2 days ago, and I set it up in the house before I left, streaming to my phone. Last night, at 3:47 a.m., the feed glitched. For a split second, I saw something in my bedroom. A tall, thin figure, its face blurred, standing at the foot of the bed. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. Then the camera went offline. I haven't been able to reconnect it since. The police are still searching the house, but they haven't found anything, no fingerprints, no DNA, just the Polaroids and that note. Hargrove called this morning, saying they found irregularities in the crawl space, but she wouldn't elaborate. She asked if I'd ever seen anyone suspicious around the house. I told her about the figure in the camera feed, but I could tell she thought I was sleep-deprived, hallucinating. I'm not. I know what I saw. I keep thinking about Harold Grayson, about what Margaret said, capturing the essence of sleep. What if he wasn't just a creepy photographer? What if he summoned something, or became something, that's still in the house? The Polaroids, the scratches, the missing people, it all points to something bigger, something the town's been hiding. I went back to the library today, digging deeper. I found a journal in the archives, written by Grayson's sister, Clara, in 1972. She said Harold had changed after buying the house, that he'd become obsessed with sleep, claiming he could see through the veil when people were unconscious. He talked about a watcher that showed him things that demanded photos as offerings. Clara thought he was schizophrenic, but she disappeared in 1973, a month before his death. I don't know what's in my house. I don't know if it's human or something else. Last night, at the motel, I woke up at 3:47 a.m., my phone screen glowing. There was a new photo in my gallery, one I didn't take. It was me, sleeping in the motel bed, the knife on the nightstand. The timestamp said 3:47 a.m. In the corner of the photo, barely visible, was that same tall, thin shape, its blurred face tilted toward me. I screamed and threw the phone across the room. I haven't slept since. I'm meeting Jake tomorrow to go through more records at the library. I'm also thinking about confronting Hargrove, demanding answers about Grayson and the missing people. But I'm terrified. What if this thing isn't tied to the house? What if it's following me? Every time I close my eyes, I hear that click, like a shutter snapping, and I'm scared I'll wake up to another photo or not wake up at all. Has anyone dealt with something like this? Should I go back to the house to check the camera, or just abandon everything and run? I don't know if I'm safe anywhere, and I'm begging for advice.